Hare Krishna. The God of terrorists is not the God of transcendentalists. Atheists often blame religion and God as the cause of evils such as terrorism. However, their denunciation of God rests on a fundamental misconception, the misunderstanding of lumping together various conceptions of God under the deceptively expansive label of God. To understand this point, let's consider the example of medicine. Now, medicine in the postmodern world usually brings up the idea of a trained and competent professional who is going to administer medicines according to tested protocols. But in some tribal areas, medicine might also bring up the idea of some swindling quacks who only fleece money from people and don't offer a tangible cure. Now, what exactly is medicine? So if we need to study it carefully to understand what actually medicine and what it is not. So if we superimpose on all of medicine the bias that we have acquired because of our experience with quacks, then we are misled and we end up misleading others. So a similar dynamic applies to the word God. The terrorists and who say that they are devoted to God, and there are transcendentalists who say that they are devoted to God. But although the word that they use to refer to their object of devotion is the same, the actual object of devotion is very different if we look at its philosophical content. Just as a quack and a trained doctor may both say that we are practicing medicine, but if we look at what they are practicing, it will be radically different. So now the Bhagavad-gita states that Bhagavad-gita indicates that our belief is a reflection of who we are. So sattvan rupa sarvasya shraddha bhavati bharata shraddha mayoyam purusha yo yat shraddhasa eva saha. So in 17.3 the Bhagavad-gita states sattvan rupa sarvasya, according to our nature, sattva, shraddha bhavati bharata, our faith is determined according to our nature, according to who we are. And shraddha mayoyam purusha, we are essentially made of our faith, shraddha mayoyam. And lastly he says yo yat shraddhasa eva saha, and whatever our faith is, that is how we will become. So the Bhagavad-gita says that our faith is determined largely by who we are, and then it determines who we become. So now when terrorists supposedly devote themselves to God, then their conception of God will be shaped by who they are. So if they are at a primitive level of consciousness, wherein they believe that strength lies in brute force by which one can control others, terrify others, then they believe that then for them God, in double quotes, becomes simply a mace cloaked in religion, becomes a mace for pounding others into subordination and if not, extinction. So the god of these terrorists is simply a projection into the arena of religion of their own fantasies. And that's why, predictably enough, we will see that their conceptions of paradise, where they will go if they blow themselves up in order to blow others, supposedly in the service of their god. So their conceptions of paradise are filled with similar domination and exploitation. They leer at the idea of countless virgins whom they can deflower for the rest of eternity. So now if we look at what transcendentalists conceive of God and what they aspire for, we'll see that it is radically different. For the transcendentalists, God is not a tool for control and domination. God is the source of love, the object to love and the object who will love, the supremely lovable and loving person. And for them, they see God as a supreme spiritual being who empowers them not to dominate others, not to conquer others, but to conquer themselves, to subordinate and eliminate their lower urges, by which they can give up their attachment to matter. Whereas terrorists basically want to control and dominate matter as the goal of their religion. Now, the God of transcendentalists, devotion to that God requires cultivating virtues, requires cultivating humility, tolerance, and leading a life of selfless service. So, for the pursuit of transcendence, the transcendentalists, far from wanting to control matter, want to give up all control of matter and focus on the pursuit of spirit. So, if we seriously study the lives of transcendentalists, we will see that they are as far away from the terrorists on the intellectual compass as one can get. The terrorists are largely in what Bhagavad-gita calls the mode of ignorance, tamoguna. So there are three modes: there is ignorance, passion, and goodness. And the transcendentalists are at the most elevated mode, at goodness and going towards and aspiring for and achieving transcendence. So by carefully understanding the conception of God, we will realize that the way to eradicate terrorism is not to reject God per se, but to not to simplistically reject God per se, but to systematically re-educate people so that they can reject the God who is simply a projection of one's own fantasies and embrace the God who is the culmination of scriptural revelation. Thank you. Hare Krishna.